Good morning or afternoon at Year 9. Welcome to another science lesson. We are now on week 3 and this will be lesson 3 where we're looking at stem cells. Now in the next lesson Miss Corbett will be doing the talking. And she is going to be talking about the ethics involved in doing stem cell research. So in this lesson, we're more focused on what a stem cell is and where you can find these stem cells. So we're still on our biology paper 1, we're still on AQA Combined Science, the trilogy, and there's some the usual equipment that you should have around you just in case you need it. So, as said, today we're going to be looking at stem cells. Now, before we get going, our last lesson was on growth and differentiation, which is quite a tricky, very dry subject. So what I would like you to do, without looking back at your notes, can you have a go at trying to remember 3 really important words, key words from last lesson, and what they mean? Or you can write down 3 key points, or put everything that you know in everything that you remember from that lesson in a paragraph. Okay, so if you could pick one of those 3 things and pause the video and give that a go. Okay, brilliant. Thank you for having a go at that. Hopefully we have managed to achieve one of those 3 different tasks. You might have talked about we'll go into any of them. You might have talked about differentiation, so where stem cells become specialized cells. You might have talked about what a specialized cell is. So it's a cell that's got certain features that enable it to perform a function. You might have talked about the different stages of development, so what a zygote is or an embryo. Or any of those things. We might summarize all of that into the paragraph. So we need to know or understand what stem cells are and what we can use them for. Okay, so I'm not going to be spending too much time on the ethics involved in this. It's purely going to be about what they can be used for and what stem cells actually are. Okay, so we've got a picture of some stem cells. So this is from an embryo. Each one of the circles would be a cell. And as we spoke about in last lesson, at the beginning of development, there aren't any differentiated cells. They're all stem cells. Okay, so can you have a go at putting down what you think we could use stem cells for? These cells that could become any type of cell. So pause the video. Have a go at that. Okay, so you might have gone down some different roads on this. You might have spoken about how it can be used in medicine to replace damaged cells or damaged tissues, or you might have talked about how it can be used in cloning, which was briefly mentioned. You don't need to know a huge amount about cloning. Either one of those would be great. So quick review. So stem cells are cells that haven't become specialized cells yet. We did look at that last lesson. They can either copy themselves to make more stem cells or undergo differentiation where they become specialized. So stem cells, when they are dividing, they'll either divide to make another stem cell, so the same cell, or they differentiate and become a specialized cell. So here is a picture illustrating that. You've got the self-renewal where it's just making another stem cell, but one of those daughter cells has differentiated, so it's become a specialized cell, such as a muscle cell or a nerve cell. These cells behave differently because there's lots of other molecules inside and around the cell that can change the way the cells behave. So that's just talking about those specialized cells. Each one is very different depending on what its function is. We did have a look at plant cells, stem cells as well last time. So again, they are unspecialized cells, but they are often found Well, they're always found in the tips of roots or shoots, and that had a special name where they are. It's called the meristem. So unspecialized stem cells exist in plants. They have the ability to self-renew and replace parts of the plants. They can become specialized into cells, any parts of the cells, so roots, leaves, or flowers. And they're often highly concentrated, so there's a lot of them at the tips of roots and shoots in structures called meristems. So that's what we were looking at last lesson. So we're now going to move on to sort of the uses of stem cells. Now, one really important part of any of the cells is that they're there for growth and repair. So uses of plant stem cells helps plant tissues to grow at the correct length and width throughout their development. We can use these for skincare products, not really helping the plants, but in animals we can use it for anti-aging serums and moisture and hydration creams. Another really good use that humans use it for on plants is things like orchids. So you see orchids are very much more popular plant. Loads of people have orchids. You often see them for sale, beautiful flowers on it. You can use the stem cells to create lots and lots of the same orchid. So if you manage to produce an orchid with a special coloration or very rare coloration, you can basically clone it. Bananas as well. The big worry is that if there is a disease that hits bananas, it's going to wipe them all out because they're all genetically identical to each other. Every banana is genetically identical because they have just been cloned. Okay, so looking now at human stem cells. So you can pause the video at the end of this and make any notes that you want. Don't just copy all of it because it's more than you need. Just make it concise and in your own words. So human development starts with just one cell, the fertilized egg. And then that cell will divide to make two daughter cells through what process? Mitosis, that is correct. These daughter cells divide and divide and divide. Okay, so you end up with a ball of cells. There are a great many steps needed to form an adult body or even a baby. Along the way, lots of different types of cells must be made. So as the initial cell is dividing and then divides and divides and divides, some of those cells will actually then become specialized to make the 200 different types of cells that we find in our body. Now, there are two main groups of stem cells in humans, and this is the first one. So embryonic stem cells. You'll find these in the blastocyst, which is a very early embryo. So you don't need to worry about the word blastocyst. It's just in the embryo, as the name suggests. So embryonic stem cells are the stem cells found in an embryo, very early development of a human. Now, these are really, really useful because they can actually make any type of cell. Whereas if you have tissue stem cells, also known as adult stem cells, these are very limited. So I couldn't take a stem cell, an adult stem cell, and make whatever cell I wanted. It would only have a limited range of cells that it could actually make. So here we have a picture of a blastocyst, so that embryo. And what we can do is take stem cells from that mass of cells. We can then, in the lab, make it divide, so it gives us more stem cells. So we started off with just one stem cell, and in the lab we can grow it in a culture, and we can get lots and lots of stem cells. And then we can actually trigger those stem cells to differentiate. So we can trigger those stem cells to make white blood cells, muscle cells, nerve cells, etc. Embryonic stem cells have the potential to become any type of specialized cells. And I know that I've said that several times, but it is so important. Embryonic stem cells can become any type of cell. Now, all of us, as adults, or as soon as you're born, all of us have got stem cells in our body all of the time. And they're really important because they are making the cells that can't make themselves. So they replace cells that are damaged or used up. And we're still learning a lot about our different stem cells. There's lots of different places you can find them. The one highlighted in red is the most important and will be the one that is referred to the most in the exams, is bone marrow. So you'll find adult stem cells in bone marrow, but there are other places that you can find it: on the surface of the eye, in the brain, breast, intestines, and testicles. And you also find it in skin and muscles as well. They are much more limited though. So as I've said before, if you have adult stem cells in the brain, it's only really going to be making brain cells. Okay. Now, it's not a very old technology, but there is something called stem cell research. So in the late 1990s, American scientists developed a method of culturing embryonic stem cells that have the potential to become any type of cell. And this raised a lot of hopes of major medical breakthroughs because you'd be able to replace diseased or worn out body parts with new healthy tissue, which we can't do at the moment. If you lose or damage nerve cells, they're unable to divide. You can't replace them. If you lose a kidney, yes, you can survive on one of them, but if something happened to that other kidney, then unless you have a transplant, it's going to be a bad situation. So we can use stem cells for that. Although there are still many technical and ethical issues to be resolved, the new techniques have the potential to revolutionize medicine. So as I said, the ethical issues are going to be spoken about in more detail with Miss Corbett in the next lesson. We're just going to be looking at what it could potentially be used for. So potential uses of stem cells. So I'm not saying that all of these that are on this slide will be cured from stem cells, but they have the potential to be treated by stem cell. So baldness, blindness, deafness, big ones like Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, because that's damage to nerve cells that can't replace, missing teeth, different muscular dystrophy, myocardial infarction, so think problems with the heart, that is, diabetes, which is an issue with the cells that make insulin in the pancreas, different cancers, Crohn's disease, spinal cord injury, so that's talking about paralysis, things like that. If you've had an accident and become paralyzed, it could be used to treat that. And also bone marrow transplantation, which it's currently already using. And any wounds that aren't healing, so deep ones or ones that just aren't healing. So that is the potential for stem cells. Whether it's right or wrong, we're not talking about, but that's what it could be, some of the things it could be used to treat. So we've got some questions here that I'd like you to have a go at. And for these ones, again, there isn't a right or wrong answer, but, because a lot of it's opinion, but in bold I've put down what you need to make sure that you have done. So we're not going to be self-assessing these ones. As I say, there's not a specific answer that I'm looking for, but what you do need to do is make sure that you're practicing saying why you have made a point. So if you needed treatment with stem cells, so one of the problems that was on the previous slide, what would you prefer to use? Would you prefer that it was using embryonic stem cells, So stem cells taken from an embryo, from a spare embryo. So often there'll be spare embryos in things like IVF treatment, embryos that have been created but aren't going to be implanted into the mother, so then normally would be discarded. Adult stem cells from you, so your own adult stem cells from someone else, or embryonic stem cells from a clone of you. So taking one of your cells, actually creating a clone, but instead of letting it develop into you, you would stop it at embryonic stage and use those. It's quite a big question, but which one do you think you would prefer? But you need to make sure you're saying why. So explain why you're using that one from what you know about stem cells. Number 2, would you be happy to create an embryo for it to be used in treating someone? So if you're going through something like IVF, which is a way of helping people get pregnant, so you take the sperm from the man, an egg cell from the woman, and you would artificially put the two together in a lab to create an embryo. Would you be happy to create an embryo just so that it's being used for treating somebody else? Explain your answer. If you had IVF, so this is number 3, if you had IVF, would you be happy with your spare embryos to be used as a source of stem cells for other people? And remember, all of those embryos have the potential of making you or a child. So would you be happy with these spares to be used as a source of stem cells? Explain your answer. If you were ill, would you be happy to accept the risks involved in stem cell therapy? So it's still a very new technology, so there are going to be risks involved in it. You could create more damage to something that's already damaged, etc. So would you accept the risks? Explain your answer. So can you pause the video now, please, and have a go at those answers. Okay, so hopefully you have had a go at those 4 questions. They're quite long questions, so it's not just one word that you should have written. Remember, as I say, we're not going to be self-assessing these ones like we have on the previous ones, because it's your own opinion. So I'm not worried about what your opinion is, as long as you have explained your answer. So have you got a because in all of your answers? Because all of the command words was explained. So have you got a because in there somewhere? Right, we are going to do a very much shorter activity than that now to finish off, and it is basically you've got to decide whether this is right or wrong. So a science teacher has applied for a job at our school. These are some of the things that they have said. Read each statement and decide if you would hire the teacher or whether you would fire the teacher. So hire if you think that it is correct, that they are talking the truth, or fire if you think that it is incorrect. So true or false, basically. Okay, number 1, stem cells connect the roots of the plant to the flower. Would you hire that person who said that or fire that person? I think for each one, I'll give you a few seconds, so you don't need to pause it after each one, so you can just decide which one it is. So that would be your time. Hopefully you have said fire, because stem cells, it's not talking about the stem of a plant, it's talking about these undifferentiated cells. Number 2, stem cells are cells that are already specialized. Hire or fire? That would be a fire again, because stem cells are unspecialized. Adult animals don't contain stem cells. Fire again. We do have stem cells, tissue stem cells, or adult stem cells in all of us. Animals have stem cells in their bone marrow. That would be a higher, because there are stem cells found in bone marrow, one of the adult tissue stem cells. It'll be possible to grow a new limb due to having stem cells in the bone marrow. That was really badly read. I will say again, it will be possible to grow a new limb due to having stem cells in the bone marrow. That would be a fire. We don't know what we will or won't be able to do. It's still very, very early days. Number 6, embryonic stem cells are easy to get hold of from fertility clinics. I would go for this one for, well, you could argue either one. If you went for higher, yes, we can get it as a spare from IVF, but also you might have said fire because it's not easy to get them. You don't just go along with a Tesco's bag and just chuck a load in. It's not as easy as that. Number 7, embryonic stem cells are always the best. We should always use them. Now this one, I would argue that would be incorrect. That would be a fire, because it's not always the case that you have to use embryonic stem cells. If you are just replacing some blood cells, for instance, you can use adult stem cells. You don't have to use embryonic stem cells. Number 8, stem cells are currently used to treat many diseases. That would be a fire. Currently, it's not many diseases, it just has the potential that it could be used to treat diseases. Our body may reject our own stem cells. I would go with fire on that one, because they're our own stem cells. Actually, your body would recognize them like any other tissue and not reject them unless you have a disease where your body is attacking itself. So actually, using your own stem cells would be really good. It's the best alternative for a lot of things because your body wouldn't reject them. Stem cells may become standard treatments to treat diabetes and nervous system damage. It's a tricky one. I would probably go with higher on that one because at the moment there isn't a cure for diabetes or cure for things like paralysis or Alzheimer's disease. So it's true that stem cells may become the standard treatments. Okay, that is it from me. Thank you very much for taking part in this lesson. And very well done for taking part in this lesson. It's quite a dry topic, so you've done very, very well. I would definitely recommend, if you are interested in the subject, of Googling about stem cell research and having a look at some of the things that they're currently testing out. Is quite interesting. And next lesson, you're going to be looking at the ethics involved in stem cell research, particularly embryonic stem cell research. So stay safe, stay well, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you very much, Elaine. Well done.